27 years, and they still haven't returned. Angela Coleman screamed in the dark room. Her eyes blazed from the desk lamp. For nearly 3 decades, Angela has carried an obsession. Her daughter, little Naomi, disappeared along with her entire class on that fateful field trip. No bodies, no explanations. The authorities closed the case like a hopeless black hole. But then, on a stormy night, Angela unexpectedly received the old file from the police. Inside was a 1,996-pager message that had never been decoded. The short, chilling words made Angela believe that Naomi didn't disappear randomly. Who sent that message, and why have they been silent for 27 years? Angela Coleman woke up before the sun could rise. The sky outside was still sunk in a pale gray hue. It evoked the same gloom that had weighed on her heart for the past 27 years. The small house in the Atlanta suburbs was silent. Only the steady ticking of the clock emphasized each dragging second in a day she always dreaded the most. Today marked exactly 27 years since the field trip vanished into oblivion. An entire class, including Naomi, her only daughter, just 11 years old back then. The whole school was shaken. The African-American community in the neighborhood was torn apart. The press exploited every detail and then went silent when the investigation hit a dead end. The authorities filed the case away. People gradually forgot, but Angela did not. She had learned to survive in the storm of memories, the long, sleepless nights, the times visiting the cemetery to lay flowers on an empty grave, the days dragging through crowds with an empty heart. Her husband had left long ago. He couldn't bear the weight of the loss. Angela nurtured the pain alone. It was like a vow that Naomi's memory would never be allowed to fade. She got out of bed. Her feet felt heavy, but her body operated on the inertia of habit. On the dressing table, Naomi's framed photo stood neatly. Her bright face beamed a radiant smile in her school uniform. Angela picked up the frame. Her trembling fingers traced the contours of that face. A wave of emotion surged, but she held it back. She took a deep breath. There were no more tears enough to soothe this void. Only the determination to cling to fragments of memory remained. In the small kitchen, Angela brewed a cup of black tea. The aroma spread, warm but not enough to ease her soul. She looked through the window. She saw the familiar street gradually brighten under the yellow lights. The houses here still stood as they had back then, but her life had been buried. The neighbors still mowed their lawns. They still greeted each other every morning, while she imprisoned herself in a chain of heavy days. The phone buzzed with a message. Helen Washington, the only friend who had stayed by her side after everything. She was also the mother of one of the missing children from that year. The message was simple. Angela, you're not alone today. I still remember, and I'm here if you need me. Angela gripped the phone tightly. A tiny spark of warmth slipped into her soul. In the tragedy, she and Helen had become family to each other. They were bound by the same deep, unhealable wound. They had gone through disappointing court sessions together, hopeless community meetings, and long nights of unanswered prayers. As the first ray of light peeked through the curtains, Angela put on her coat. She prepared to walk to Helen's house. She took a box of cookies and a few herbal tea bags from the cupboard, a small gift so she wouldn't arrive empty-handed. No matter how many years passed, she still maintained that courtesy. It was like a way to prove to herself that the pain hadn't turned her into a soulless shadow. On the familiar road, Angela walked slowly. The trees still rustled, the old wooden fences were still stained by time, and the small playground where the kids once laughed lay silent behind the row of houses. Each scene was like a slice of the past. It drowned her in memories. As she approached Helen's house, Angela saw the front door slightly ajar. Helen stood waiting. Her kind face held the familiar sorrow. Without words, they hugged. They exchanged the comfort that only those who had lost children could understand. Angela handed over the bag of tea and the box of cookies. Helen smiled weakly, then led her inside. Helen's house always exuded a strange warmth. Family photos hung along the hallway. Sally's face, Helen's daughter, appeared in every picture. The two sat on the sofa. They waited for the kettle to boil. The ticking of the wall clock mingled with the faint scent of tea. It created a rare, peaceful moment on this special day. Helen poured the tea. She handed it to Angela. They sat facing each other. They were silent for a long time, as if no words were needed to feel the waves rising in each other's hearts. Then, Helen nodded slightly. Her eyes met Angela's in unspoken empathy. They both knew today would stir up old obsessions again, but they also knew they had to face it. They had to stare straight at the pain to keep existing. Angela set her teacup down. Her gaze drifted into space. The obsession with Naomi had never left her, but today was different. She had just received an old file box from the police, papers, photos, and investigation reports from 1996. Among them was something strange she hadn't dared to open, a blurry printout of a pager message recovered from the case data. Just a few short words, but it could be the thin thread leading through the entire maze. In Angela's heart, a flame flickered. Perhaps, after all these years, she was about to touch the truth. But the truth could also destroy what little hope she had left. Dear listeners, please pause for a moment to subscribe to the channel before continuing with the main part of the story, but only if you truly empathize with what I'm sharing here, and leave a comment below to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is now. It's fascinating to see people from everywhere joining us. In Helen's living room, the morning light filtered through the thin curtains. It drew soft lines of brightness on the wooden floor. The steam from the tea rose. It spread a warm aroma, but Angela couldn't stop her hand from trembling as it touched the bag beside her. Inside, the file the police had just returned was like a silent bomb. It waited to explode. Helen quietly stood up. She walked to the wooden cabinet where she kept mementos she never wanted to discard. A thick photo album was placed on the table. Its leather cover was worn by the years. When the book opened, the past flooded back. Each page was like a door leading them back to intact days. The first photos appeared. Naomi and Sally in tiny uniforms, their hair neatly braided. Innocent smiles radiant under the schoolyard. Sunday Angela held her breath. She let her eyes glide over every detail. The familiar scene was now filled with pain. It was like a shard of glass cutting into her heart. Helen placed a hand on Angela's shoulder, a light touch, wordless but filled with the strength of empathy. The next page showed lively birthday parties, cakes covered in pink frosting, twinkling candles, and the kids' embraces. Laughter echoed from the pictures. Then it faded into the heavy silence of the present. They flipped silently, no need to say anything, because each image spoke for itself. Then Angela spotted an unusual frame. It was the class at the science fair, beaming faces, eyes full of enthusiasm. In the corner of the photo, the familiar yellow bus waited. Angela tilted her head. Her gaze lingered longer. An adult stood behind the kids, but not the teacher everyone had mentioned. She squinted. Her heart beat faster. In her memory, she only recalled the trip that day had the teacher and a support staff. But this photo revealed the presence of another face, cold and blurry in the background. Helen leaned down. She followed her friend's gaze. Light skimmed her face. It revealed deep wrinkles etched by time. She exhaled softly, but said nothing. In both their eyes, a simmering doubt was awakened. The photo was like a mismatched puzzle piece, placed wrong in the overall picture. Angela closed the album. Her heart pounded. She knew she couldn't delay any longer. Her trembling hand opened the bag. She took out the brown file envelope. Inside, a stack of yellowed papers. Mixed in was a faint printout, with dancing letters hard to read. It was the pager message the police found when digitizing the file, but it had never been decoded. Angela placed the paper on the table. Both leaned down. The scattered characters appeared like a code. Bus 14, not safe, 1127. Not much, just 4 words and a number, but enough to freeze the room. Angela felt her blood run cold. The message was sent that very morning the class disappeared. Bus 14 was the bus carrying Naomi and her friends. The words "not safe" echoed in her head like a death knell. And 11:27, the exact time the bus left the schoolyard. In that moment, memories flooded back. Angela recalled Naomi running out of the house that morning, her backpack swinging behind, singing along to the music from the old radio as she went. None of them knew it would be the last time. If that message had been decoded sooner, if the police hadn't overlooked it, maybe everything would have been different. Angela leaned back in the chair. Her breathing was ragged. She felt pulled back to 1996, trapped in a whirlpool of suffering. But at the same time, in her chest, a small flame ignited. This wasn't an ordinary piece. This could be a sign that someone knew the truth from the start, but had been forced into silence. Helen looked at her friend. Her eyes shone amid the pain. Though they had experienced countless hopes and disappointments, both knew this time was different. That message couldn't be random. It was a warning, a secret that had never been explored. Angela picked up the paper. She clutched it tightly in her hand. For the first time in many years, she felt something close to faith. The truth wasn't dead. It was just buried, and now it was emerging from the darkness. All right, my dear audience, if you're watching and finding this story interesting, please comment the number 1 or comment, "I'm still here," to continue listening. Helen's living room gradually sank into silence after the paper with the printed pager message was placed on the table. That fragile presence carried the weight like a stone pressing on Angela's chest. She sat motionless, her eyes still glued to the short words, as if staring a little longer would make them reveal the answer. But everything remained mute. Images of Naomi flooded back. The little girl sitting in the back seat of the bus, laughing with friends, unaware that fate had turned in another direction. Angela pressed her hand to her chest, where her heartbeat pounded in reverse. She knew she couldn't let this piece lie dormant in the file drawer, like the lost years. It needed to be unearthed, even if that meant touching a wound that had never healed. Helen stood up. She cleared away the photo album, but her eyes still glanced toward Angela, as if wanting to stop her. 27 years had taught them that hope could become a double-edged sword, sharper when forged by despair. Helen had learned to accept, but Angela had not. In her, the pain had never cooled, and now it was being fueled again. That afternoon, as she left Helen's house, Angela walked under a gloomy sky. Gray clouds piled up like a harbinger of rain, and her heart felt equally heavy. In her hand, she clutched the paper with the faint print. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but the urge in her heart wouldn't allow her to turn back. Her steps led her to the familiar bus stop, the place where every year she waited to go to the flower shop to buy a bouquet for Naomi's invisible grave. But this time was different. Instead of going to the shop, she sat still. Her eyes looked through the bus window. She let her thoughts carry her away. The printout lay in her bag like a hot ember. The third stop appeared, and from afar, Angela recognized the old neighborhood where the principal once lived. The image of that powerful woman flashed back in her memory. Her stern posture, her firm voice in parent meetings, and her distant eyes when facing the grieving families after the disappearance. That year, she insisted she wasn't on the field trip, that only teacher Gregory and a support staff accompanied. But the photo in the album this morning sowed doubt, and now the pager message made the principal's shadow even darker. Angela pressed the bell. She stepped off as the door opened. Wind blew strongly through the quiet street. The trees rustled like whispers. She walked slowly. Her eyes scanned the houses that were familiar yet strange. Time had changed the neighborhood's appearance, but intuition guided her to stop in front of a house with a white fence and a neatly trimmed flower garden. A faint memory rose. This was the home of Principal Lillian Brooks. Angela stood silent. Her hands gripped the bag strap tightly. She had never had a close relationship with this woman, beyond a few greetings and some school meetings. But after the tragedy, her image always cast a shadow, present in the collective pain, but also the one holding unexplained gaps. Without time to think, Angela stepped up the porch. She knocked on the door. The knocks echoed in the silent house. She waited, her heart pounded chaotically. Each second felt like a minute. When she was about to turn away, a sound came from inside. Then the door cracked open. A middle-aged woman appeared, tall stature, curly hair streaked with gray. That face Angela recognized immediately, even though time had worn it down. It was Lillian Brooks. The moment their eyes met, Angela noticed the confusion flash in the woman's eyes. No longer the calm demeanor of old, only wariness, as if Angela's appearance was unexpected. Without greetings, Angela opened her bag. She took out the paper with the pager message. She held it in her hand. The letters trembled under the dim light. She didn't speak. She let the paper speak for itself. Lillian looked down. Her eyes scanned the short line, then quickly looked up. Her face tried to stay composed, but her hands trembled slightly. It didn't escape Angela's notice. The air thickened, as if the whole house and the surrounding street were waiting for an answer. Angela took a deep breath. She felt clearly the inner struggle, between the fear of possibly stirring up a terrible secret and the belief that this was the necessary step. Outside, the sky darkened. The first raindrops fell. They created streaks on the porch. In Angela's heart, a question echoed. If the principal knew about this message, why had she been silent for 27 years? Angela stood on the porch. Her breathing was rapid. The rain fell sparsely on the roof. It tapped a steady, uneasy rhythm like background music. In front of her, Principal Lillian Brooks slowly opened the door wider. Time had etched deep wrinkles on her face, but her eyes remained sharp, though hidden behind them was a flash of confusion. Without waiting to be invited, Angela stepped in. The glossy wooden floor echoed with heavy footsteps. They stretched into an uncomfortable resonance. The house carried the smell of old wood and a faint candle scent, a false warmth overlaying the stifling atmosphere. Paintings on the walls, mountain landscapes, still lakes, seemed to cover the underlying chaos. Angela sat on the hard sofa. Her eyes didn't leave Lillian's face. The other woman moved around the room. She arranged a few books on the shelf, poured water into a glass, all too slowly, as if to delay the time before facing the truth. When she sat in the opposite chair, she crossed her arms. She tried to regain her former authoritative posture. The paper with the pager message still lay neatly in Angela's hand. She placed it on the table between them, the paper facing the other. The faint letters were like a scar etched into the space, impossible to erase. Lillian's eyes wavered slightly as she glanced at the line, but she quickly regained her cold composure. Without many words, Angela understood clearly. She had recognized the message's content. That hesitant blink was a silent confession. But Lillian didn't speak. Instead, she sipped the water, set the glass on the table. The sound of it touching the glass rang dry. The space sank into stillness. Only the rain outside grew heavier. It drummed on the roof like pounding drums. Angela felt her breath heavy, but she focused on observing every movement. The woman before her was not just a retired principal. She was the door to answers, and possibly the wall blocking the truth. Angela recalled the first day after the disappearance. Lillian had stood before all the parents, her voice decisive as she affirmed she wasn't on the bus trip. Only teacher Gregory and a support staff. Those words back then were like a sentence, slamming shut every investigation door. But the photo Angela and Helen viewed this morning told a different story, Lillian's shadow lurking among the kids. And now, the pager message with the exact matching time made her denial even more suspicious. Angela leaned back in the chair, her eyes still locked on the other. In her mind, thoughts intertwined. Perhaps Lillian was just a frightened witness, or maybe she was the one who knew and hid the horror. The small cracks in that calm demeanor reinforced the second hypothesis. From behind the kitchen door, a faint sound echoed. Angela startled slightly. She directed her gaze there. In an instant, a shadow flickered, then disappeared. Her heart pounded. No one had ever mentioned Lillian living with someone else. Who was the person who just stepped back into the darkness? The atmosphere added another layer of tension. Lillian leaned slightly, as if to block the view to the hallway, then quickly shifted the conversation to bland, polite words. But Angela didn't listen. She only sensed the falseness emanating from every movement of the other. Outside, thunder rumbled. Lightning tore across the sky. It illuminated the room in a brief moment. In that light, Angela saw clearly Lillian's face tremble slightly, her hand unconsciously gripping the armrest. Someone who once held power over hundreds of students and parents now revealed wavering before a piece of paper. Angela knew she had hit the crack. The pager message wasn't just an overlooked detail. It was a key piece, and Lillian, by her silence, had just confirmed that this key opened a door she didn't want anyone to see. The rain outside poured heavily. It drowned out all other sounds. Angela sat there, her heart boiled between fear and determination. She understood the path she was on couldn't be turned back, but the 27 years of pain wouldn't allow her to stop. In the flickering light, with darkness creeping around the room, Angela silently told herself the truth couldn't be buried forever, and she was ready to dig to the very end, no matter the cost. The rain lasted until late afternoon. When the last drops stopped falling, the pale gray sky gave way to a fragile glow. Angela left Lillian's house with a chaotic mind. What had just happened didn't bring answers, but it wasn't a dead end either. Lillian's evasion, the slight tremble in her hand, and the vague shadow in the kitchen all combined into a chain of contradictions that made Angela even more determined. As every year, she went to the small flower shop in the town center. The florist was familiar with that face, and without asking knew what she would choose today. Angela selected white lilies, the kind Naomi once loved, and wrapped them in thin newspaper. The bouquet in her hand was a familiar ritual, a thread holding memory to the daughter who never returned. The bus took her to the cemetery on the town's edge. As she stepped off, Angela took a deep breath. The air here always carried the smell of damp earth and wild grass, but also an unusual stillness, as if the souls were whispering in the wind. The dirt path soft underfoot. Her shoes left mottled prints as she advanced toward the grave area for the missing students. The headstones lined up, each child's name engraved. Some were decorated with fresh flowers, teddy bears, photos, proof of families' enduring love. But others were covered in moss, where memories had faded with time. Angela stopped at Naomi's headstone. She placed the bouquet down. Her trembling hands brushed over her daughter's name. Her heart tightened, each character etched like a knife carving into flesh. She knelt. She let the tears fall naturally. 27 years, and the pain remained as raw as the first day. In that moment, Angela felt almost like giving up, as if the entire search was just an endless loop. But then, a movement at the corner of her eye pulled her out of the silence. A few rows away, a young woman stood motionless. She bowed her head, her hands clasped tightly, her posture lonely. That figure stood out in the desolate scene, both familiar and distant. Angela lifted her head. She tried to see clearer. The sunset light hit the woman's face. It revealed angular features, swollen red eyes like she had just cried. Angela's heart pounded. She realized this was the shadow that flickered in Lillian's kitchen. This time, no door hid her. The young woman was fully exposed, present in the cemetery, like a secret rising from the ground. Angela stood up. She walked slowly toward her. Each step pounded in her chest. The woman startled slightly when she saw her approach, but didn't leave. She only stepped back a little. Her eyes shone with wariness. In silence, the two faced each other. Without words, Angela already sensed something immense hidden behind that gaze. Near the grave in front of the woman, Angela glimpsed a small frame placed beside. The photo was old, blurred by time and weather, but the face in it was clearly one of the children who disappeared with Naomi. Angela swallowed hard. Her heart surged. The young woman trembled as she picked up the frame. She held it close to her chest, as if afraid it would be taken. The air thickened. Only the rustling wind in the trees and the chirping insects remained. Angela felt she was standing at a crossroads. This woman couldn't be a stranger. The way she looked at the photo, her eyes filled with mournful memories, suggested a truth Angela didn't dare voice. She might be one of the students from back then. Angela stepped back half a step. She didn't want to force, but her heart beat strongly. This was a living witness, the missing piece she had searched for nearly 3 decades. All the silence, all the evasion from Lillian, everything revolved around this woman. The sun gradually set. It cast long shadows over the graves. Angela clenched her fists. She felt a new determination rise. She knew this moment would change everything. The young woman wasn't just a shadow in someone's house. She was the door to the truth, and Angela couldn't let it close again. Are you still here, my dear audience? Pause and relax a bit. Maybe drink a glass of water and then continue listening to the engaging content. Please comment the number 1 if you find this story interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The afternoon had ended. The cemetery was covered in the deep purple of dusk. The trees cast long shadows. The wind carried a cold, damp earth chill through the gaps in her coat. Angela stood facing the young woman. Her heart raced, as if sensing that this moment would be the turning point of her persistent journey. The woman still held the frame close to her chest. Her eyes wavered between sorrow and weariness. She was like a bird just escaped from a cage, trembling, but still trying to hide in silence. Angela didn't speak. She only let her presence convey the message. She wasn't a threat. Time stretched in the silence. The wind and the crunching dry leaves underfoot became the only music. Angela observed every detail, the thin shoulders slightly shaking, the fresh swelling around the eyes, the face with features contrasting between adulthood and unbroken childhood memories. Each movement of that woman reflected pain, suppressed too long. A fragile moment occurred when their eyes met. In those eyes, Angela saw a flash, not strangeness, but recognition. That look cut into her heart like a blade, suggesting the woman knew more than she wanted to reveal. Angela clenched her hand. She tried to stay calm amid the flooding emotions. The woman stepped back. She turned her face away, as if wanting to disappear into the darkness. But Angela instinctively advanced, keeping just enough distance, not letting her escape. The two moved silently among the headstones, each step heavy in the thick air. It seemed the cemetery now held only them, 2 surviving souls lost in the land of the dead. Angela looked down at the frame in the other's hand. Through the blurred glass, she still recognized the face of a little girl who was in class with Naomi. That girl had her name engraved on a nearby headstone, but now her image lay in the arms of an adult woman. A question rose in Angela's mind. Why was she carrying this photo? And why visit a stranger's grave with eyes full of mourning? A strong gust blew through. It made the photo in the frame sway. The woman gripped it tighter, but that action made Angela notice another detail. Her hand bore thin scars, stretching along the wrist, like traces of years imprisoned in darkness. The scars didn't lie. They whispered of a painful history, a memory never told. The sunset light faded, giving way to night. Angela sensed the moment would pass if she didn't seize it. Her heart urged, but her lips remained silent. Without words, only with eyes and patience, she let the woman decide if she wanted to break the silence. Finally, a small movement broke the tension. The woman bent down. She placed the frame back at the foot of the headstone, her hands trembling as if just relinquishing a part of memory. Then she looked up. She gazed at Angela again. In those eyes, tears welled up glistening. Not strangeness, but silent acknowledgement. Angela took a deep breath. She felt her chest tighten. All these years, she had sought a sign. Proof that Naomi and the class hadn't completely vanished without trace. And now, before her, was a piece of the past existing, in flesh and blood. This woman wasn't just a visitor. She was one of the children from 1996, but somehow, she had survived. Without anyone saying it, that truth silently fell into the space, heavy yet certain. Angela felt her legs wobble. She had to grasp the air to stay balanced. A feeling both horrifying and relieving mixed, as if the nightmare of 27 years suddenly cracked open a sliver of light. The young woman bowed her head, Tears fell silently onto the grass. All explanations were held back behind tightly pressed lips. But Angela didn't need to hear right then. Her existence, her standing here in the cemetery, was already the most eloquent confession. Night fell, the cemetery flooded in darkness. The insects mingled with the wind, creating a persistent sad melody. Angela stood still. She felt like the world around her had changed color. Before her, the young woman was no longer a stranger. She was the missing piece, the living witness, and possibly the final key unlocking the buried truth. Angela knew, from this moment, her life would never be the same. Night had covered the cemetery completely. Only the pale yellow streetlights cast down on patches of wet grass. Angela still stood motionless, as if tied to the moment. Before her, the young woman bowed her head. Her thin shoulders trembled in the wind whistling through the trees. No one else around them, only the thick silence and Angela's heart pounding like a hammer. Time seemed to stop. Then, in a light shiver, the woman lifted her head. Her face showed clear turmoil. Her eyes held a storm, both resisting and surrendering. Tears rolled down, glistening under the dim light. She slowly opened her mouth, her voice hoarse, as if those words had been imprisoned too long in her chest. "I shouldn't be here," the words whispered like a breeze, but to Angela, they were thunder striking her soul. She tensed, waiting for more. The woman swallowed hard, then continued, each word a knife cutting into the night. "I am one of the children from that year." The whole space seemed to shake. Angela was stunned. Her hand gripped the edge of her coat. Her breath caught. For 27 years, she had prayed for a miracle. And now, that miracle was present, not in vague hope, but in flesh and blood. The young woman stood trembling, her arms hugging herself. She stepped back slightly, as if afraid of being rejected by the world. But Angela didn't advance, didn't startle her. She just stood still, her heart overflowing between pain and hope. She wanted to scream, to ask 1,000 questions, but she restrained. Because Angela understood, if there was a chance to hear the truth, it would only come when she was patient enough. The woman took a long breath. Her eyes looked toward the dark headstones in the distance. Her voice low, broken. "My name is Maya Whitfield. I was on that bus trip. I didn't die like everyone thought." Angela felt her legs give way. That name hit her memory. Maya, one of the 5th grade students with Naomi. She clearly remembered the small face with a radiant smile in the old yearbook photo. That name had been engraved on a cold headstone, and now, the girl from back then stood before her, grown in pain, survived in darkness. Maya closed her eyes. She let the tears pour out. She spoke like a confessor. "They told me that if I returned, everyone would suffer more. I believed that. I hid. I lived like someone without identity. I let my parents believe I was lost." Her voice choked, breaking into pieces. "And every year I come back here, silently, to remember those who weren't as lucky as me." Angela listened, her heart twisted. All these years, she had imagined Naomi still somewhere, but never thought one of the children had truly returned in silence. She wanted to hug Maya, to soothe those invisible wounds, but she also understood that this girl had borne a weight few could imagine. In the darkness, Maya trembled and stepped back, as if wanting to disappear. But Angela reached out, not touching, just gently raising her hand in the air, like a silent plea. That gesture made Maya stop. Her eyes glistened in tears. In a flash, Angela saw the weakness crack, giving way to determination. The girl took a deep breath. She spoke more slowly, her voice heavy like falling stones. "There are many things you don't know. What happened that day isn't like what everyone thinks. And, Naomi, your daughter." The sentence stopped, choked in her throat, like a secret that couldn't be uttered immediately. Angela was stunned. Her mind spun. Naomi's name from Maya's mouth was like a hammer striking memory. Her whole body shook, Her heart both waited and feared. All these years, Naomi remained only in photos and empty headstones. But now, the truth was about to be revealed, and Angela didn't know if she had the strength to endure. Maya wiped her tears. Her breathing was rapid. She glanced around, her eyes anxious, as if fearing the darkness itself was eavesdropping. Then she nodded slightly. She whispered almost desperately, "I'll tell you. But not here. They're still watching. They've never let me be completely free." Angela held her breath. That single word cut into the mystery like a knife. Who was behind it? And how did Maya, a 10-year-old girl back then, survive to this day under invisible control? The thick darkness swallowed the cemetery. Angela sensed the real storm was just beginning. Angela hurried out of the cemetery, her legs trembled but resolute. Maya followed behind, her demeanor uneasy, as if fearing someone would suddenly emerge from the shadows. The gravel path to the main street was silent, only the echo of their footsteps and the flickering streetlights like eyes watching them. Angela clearly felt the tension radiating from Maya, as if every tree shadow, every dark corner hid a threat. The two said nothing until they boarded the bus back to town. Inside the empty bus, the cold fluorescent lights cast down on worn seats. Maya sat by the window, her eyes glued to the darkness outside, her body taut like a stretched string. Angela sat beside her. She observed silently. In that silence, she felt clearly. This wasn't just a woman carrying sad memories, but a witness haunted, bound for 27 years by a deadly secret. When the bus stopped at the town center, Angela led Maya along a narrow alley to an old cafe still lit. This was a place few knew. More importantly, it was tied to the quiet afternoons Angela sought during her time of grief. The cafe was nearly empty. Only soft jazz played from an old radio. They chose a secluded table at the back, where the yellow lamplight just illuminated Maya's pale face. The hot coffee placed before her didn't calm the young woman. Maya's hands gripped each other. Her fingers trembled as if bloodless. Angela didn't press. She only waited silently. She knew any urging now could make Maya shut down, and the truth would remain buried forever. A long silence passed before Maya slightly raised her head. Her eyes were drowned in the darkness of memory. Her voice sank as if echoing from a deep pit. That day, the trip was never just a field trip. Angela felt her heart tighten. Maya swallowed hard, she continued. Each word dragged from the depths of suffering. We got on the bus. Teacher Gregory sat up front. Everyone thought it was just a normal trip. But as soon as the bus left the school, I saw another car following. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Until we turned onto a deserted road, and it didn't leave. The yellow bulb on the cafe ceiling flickered slightly. Its light highlighted the tense lines on Maya's face. Then, the bus stopped in the middle of the road, for no reason. A man got on. Not a teacher, not a parent. A stranger, in a long coat, reeking of tobacco. He spoke with Teacher Gregory. I couldn't hear clearly. But right after, the air in the bus changed. All of us felt something was wrong. Angela gripped the table's edge. Her heart pounded chaotically. Maya paused, her eyes fixed on the coffee cup. Her voice broke. Then everything happened so fast. We were forced off the bus, one by one. Others were waiting. They took us into two large vans. I remember the crying, the screaming, but no one came to help. The road was empty. No one saw. The cafe seemed to freeze. Angela could barely breathe. What she just heard shattered every theory over the years. An accident? A natural disappearance? No. This was a plan. A meticulously organized abduction. Maya clenched her hands. The scars on her wrist blanched under the light. I don't remember everything. We were taken to a faraway place, like an old warehouse. Dark, cold, musty. Then, some kids were separated, never returned. I heard screams echoing through the walls, then silence. That night, I just curled up in a corner, waiting for my turn. Angela felt her blood freeze. Naomi's image flashed in her mind, her daughter's smile mixed with the screams Maya just evoked. Her eyes blurred, but she didn't dare blink, afraid to miss a detail. Maya took a sharp breath. She tried to regain composure. I escaped by luck. One of the guards took pity. He secretly opened the door for me to run. I ran, kept running, until I collapsed by the roadside. When I woke, I was in a strange town. People didn't believe me, or didn't want to. And then, someone found me. Mrs. Brooks. Angela startled. That name sliced through her ears like a blade. Principal Lillian Brooks. The woman Angela confronted just hours ago. The one who dodged every question. Maya nodded, her eyes filled with tears. She knew I was alive. She took me away, hid my identity, raised me in secret. But in return, I wasn't allowed to tell. She said the truth would only hurt more families, that it was best to let everyone believe we were dead. Angela felt her chest tighten. Anger and grief swirled. They threatened to tear her apart. That woman, for all these years, had buried the truth, turned the pain of dozens of families into a secret. And Naomi? Her name hadn't yet surfaced in the story. Outside, the wind howled through the glass door, like the wail of souls. Angela sat silent, her eyes on Maya, her mind echoing a question she couldn't suppress. Where was Naomi in that nightmare? In the small cafe, the flickering yellow light fell on the old wooden table. It illuminated Maya's pale face. Angela sat across, her hands clasped so tightly they blanched. She knew the question couldn't wait. Naomi, her daughter, where was she in that nightmare? Maya bowed her head, silent as if buried in memory. The air grew so heavy that the ticking wall clock echoed like hammer strikes. Finally, Maya took a deep breath. Her shoulders trembled. Her voice broke into fragments. I remember, Naomi. I remember her clearly. Angela gripped the table's edge. Her heartbeat raced. Maya closed her eyes. Memories flooded like a torrent. In the warehouse, we were locked together at first. All the kids huddled, crying, scared. Naomi was different. She didn't cry much. She sat beside me, held my hand, whispered that everything would be okay. Her voice was gentle, like she wanted to comfort the whole group. In that moment, Angela saw Naomi come alive, her kind smile and hopeful eyes. She wanted to believe her daughter was truly a light in the darkness for the other kids. Maya continued. Her voice sank lower. But then, one night, they randomly chose a few kids. Naomi was among them. I still remember, her hand pulled from mine. I tried to hold on, but the force was too strong. Naomi only had time to turn back, her eyes wide, like a silent goodbye. Angela felt her whole body shake. Tears spilled, blurring the scene before her. She couldn't speak. She let Maya lead her into the horrific past. They took the kids to another room. I heard the iron door slam shut. Then, a chemical smell wafted out. Naomi coughed violently. They injected something into each kid's arm. Some passed out right away. Naomi tried to stay standing, but then collapsed. I pressed my face to a crack in the wood. I looked through. I saw her eyes slowly close. That was the last time I saw Naomi alive. Maya stopped, choked with sobs. Angela slumped onto the table. Her trembling hand covered her mouth to stifle a sob. The image of her daughter collapsing, her eyes fading, stabbed her heart like a blade. But amid that pain, a small flame burned. At least, Naomi wasn't alone. She wasn't invisible. Someone witnessed her final moment. Someone remembered. Maya wiped her tears. Her voice softened, as if whispering to herself, I think the dose wasn't right. They panicked, argued. I heard one guy curse, say they'd have to dispose of them quickly before anyone found out. After that, Naomi and another kid were taken away. I didn't see bodies, no evidence, just emptiness. But I know they didn't survive. Angela shut her eyes tightly. Tears streamed endlessly. What she feared for 27 years was finally confirmed. No room left for the illusion that Naomi was still alive somewhere. Her daughter was dead, not in a random accident, but at the hands of cold-blooded people, in a dark conspiracy. The cafe became suffocating. Maya bowed low, her voice soft like a confession. I wanted to forget, but Naomi's face haunts me every night. She died in terror, but she was the only one keeping me sane then. She didn't abandon me, even as she was dragged away. If I can speak today, it's because of Naomi. She taught me silence never brings justice. Angela sat silent. Tears fell on her hands. Her heart shattered, but in the pain, she saw another light. Naomi left a mark in the memory of a survivor. Her daughter's death, though tragic, had a witness. And now, the truth was no longer buried. Outside, the wind howled through the glass. It carried fallen leaves, like distant echoes of souls. Angela looked up, her red eyes blazed with determination. Naomi's death wouldn't be forgotten. This story, though cruel, would be the proof to bring the truth to light. Maya sat silent, her hands clasped tightly. She had given Angela the most painful gift, the truth. And Angela understood. From this moment, her journey wasn't just for Naomi, but for all the children who never returned. Angela sat motionless in the cafe, her heart flooded with rekindled pain. The image of Naomi collapsing in the warehouse's darkness, her eyes closing under a cruel injection, played like an endless reel in her mind. That pain tore through every fiber. It made her want to collapse. But alongside despair, another feeling formed, fierce and relentless, rage. For 27 years, she was forced to accept silence. The cold headstones, the shelved investigation files, the school's evasion, all built a thick wall between her and the truth. Now, as Maya confirmed Naomi died at the hands of ruthless people, that wall no longer stood. It crumbled, revealing a path Angela knew she must walk, no matter how thorny. She looked up at Maya sitting across, the young woman still curled up, her eyes red, as if she'd given a piece of her soul in the confession. Angela placed a trembling hand on the table, not touching but close enough to send a silent message. You weren't in vain. Naomi couldn't return, but the truth about her would be the flame, lighting the way to justice. As they left the cafe, Angela stepped into the night street with a different demeanor. The heavy steps of grief gave way to a firm, strong stride. The gray night sky, the streetlights reflecting on scattered rain puddles. The city sank in stillness, but in Angela's heart, a storm had begun to rise. She knew the first step, return to the police. For years, they shook their heads, called the case cold, no leads to pursue. But now, a living witness had appeared. Maya was the most crucial witness. The truth she held could force the door of justice open again. Angela pictured Inspector Jensen's face, the man who once handled the case, then abandoned it when clues ran dry. She remembered his tired eyes the day he signed the order to close the file, his heavy sigh when he said, nothing left to follow. Back then, Angela had cried, begged, but it all fell into the void. Now was different. She wouldn't beg anymore. She would demand. On the way home, distant car horns mixed with the wind howling through buildings, like the rhythm of a new journey. Angela felt every nerve taut. Her body awakened from a long slumber. The pain of losing her child had been a smoldering flame for years. Now it blazed fiercely, illuminating the path ahead. At home, Angela opened the dusty wooden box in the closet. Inside were all the files she'd kept over the years, copies of statements, old news articles, photos from the scene. Each page was a cut of flesh. She'd flipped through them until the edges wore thin. Now, they were no longer relics of pain, but weapons. She placed the pager message printout on top. What she once thought was a mere fragment now became the link in Maya's story. The message appeared on the same day, the same time. It was the red thread tying all pieces together, and Angela knew, if investigated thoroughly, that message could lead to the sender, and from there, to the entire network behind it. Maya sat silently on the chair, her eyes vacant. Angela looked at her, saw the exhaustion after unloading the truth. But she also knew, Maya was the key. She carried the memories of a surviving witness, things no document or file could capture. And Angela would protect her, at any cost. That night, as the city slept, Angela sat at her desk. The yellow lamplight fell on her haggard face. She wrote the first lines of a report, each word carved into her heart. On the 14th of May 1996, the fifth-grade students of Jefferson School didn't disappear. They were abducted. She continued, listing every detail from Maya's account, not as a grieving parent, but as a second witness, recording evidence that needed to see the light. Each word became a hammer striking the wall of silence society had built. The clock struck midnight, but Angela wasn't tired. For the first time in years, she felt she was on the right path. Naomi was gone, but her daughter's death would no longer be a silent shadow. It would become a call forcing justice to respond. Angela told herself. When dawn broke, she would walk into the police station, no longer with a desperate mother's heart, but with a warrior's spirit, carrying the flame of truth. The next morning, as the sun barely pierced the thick clouds, Angela stood before the mirror, straightening her collar. She saw her sunken eyes, blazing not with fatigue, but determination. Behind her, Maya sat silently on the chair, her face weary, as if she hadn't slept all night. Angela saw the fear in her, but also a flickering spark of courage in her eyes, like a weak flame in the dark. They stepped outside together. The early morning streets were quiet, only the sound of tires rolling slowly on wet pavement. Angela drove with a heavy heart, but her hands gripped the wheel firmly, no longer trembling. In her mind, she prepared every word she'd say to the police. This was no longer just personal pain. It was a truth, powerful enough to awaken a case thought long asleep. As they stopped before the police station, Angela took a deep breath. The gray concrete facade, the American flag hanging still above, all evoked memories of 27 years ago, days of walking in and out in despair, receiving only silence and headshakes. But this time, she didn't come empty-handed. Maya was living proof. The truth in her story held undeniable weight. The hallway inside was lit by cold fluorescent bulbs, chairs and tables neatly arranged as if time hadn't passed. A desk officer looked up, his eyes swept over Angela, then lingered on Maya, curious, wary. Angela said they had critical information about the 1996 disappearance case. Immediately, the quiet room tensed. Eyes turned, whispers rippled like an undercurrent. They were led to an old interrogation room, pale gray walls, a fixed camera in the corner. Angela sat, feeling the cold seep through the chair's wood. Maya sat across, her hands clasped, her face bowed low. The door opened. Inspector Jensen walked in. He'd aged much, silver-streaked hair, slightly hunched shoulders. But his eyes were still sharp, steeped in the weariness of someone who'd seen too much disappointment. He looked at Angela, faintly recognizing her, then shifted to Maya. No smile, no pleasantries. Just a blunt, sad question. The case again? The way he said it made Angela flinch. She knew he didn't want to reopen wounds, but she also knew he was the only one who'd once truly cared, before the case was pushed into oblivion. Angela laid out everything, from the photo, the pager message, to the strange encounter leading to Maya. Her voice was low but steady. Each word drove into the air. Maya was silent at first, but under Angela's quiet encouragement, she began to speak. Her voice trembled, halting, but each detail clear. The warehouse, footsteps, dim light, injections, and the children's choked cries. The room thickened as Jensen sat still. His pen stopped, his eyes bored into Maya, analyzing every breath. When Maya stopped, tears streaming down her cheeks, the room fell silent. Jensen tapped his pen lightly on the table, his eyes darkened. He spoke slowly, weighing each word. If what you say is true, this isn't just a disappearance. It's an organized crime. But do you have any evidence beyond memory? The question cut like a cold blade. Angela stiffened. She'd prepared for skepticism, but didn't expect it to be so brutal. Maya bowed her head, Her shoulders shook. Angela clenched her hands, forcing herself to stay calm. She reiterated the pager message, the unexamined files. She insisted Maya's memory couldn't be dismissed, as it matched the remaining digital trace. Jensen sighed. His eyes flickered with doubt. He stood, checked the corner camera to ensure it was running. For a moment, he looked back at Angela, lowered his voice. Do you know what you're poking at? If there's really a force behind this, they won't let it rest. Angela was silent. Fear flashed through her, but was swallowed by determination. For years, she'd lived with ultimate pain. Nothing could scare her more. Jensen left the room, leaving Angela and Maya in suffocating tension. Through the frosted glass door, Angela saw young officers whispering, their eyes glinting like blades. No one spoke, but she sensed a rising wave of resistance. The truth they brought wasn't just a burden. It was a threat to those who'd buried the case for decades. The door swung open again. Jensen returned, a thick file in hand. He placed it on the table, his eyes tense. I'll review everything. But you must understand, once we start, there's no turning back. Angela nodded. Her heart pounded, but her eyes blazed. She'd come too far to turn back. Maya sat beside her, still trembling, but her eyes gradually shone as if Angela's fire had sparked in her. In that moment, Angela knew they'd entered a battle bigger than themselves. A fight not just for Naomi, but to expose an entire dark system, and she was ready to face its cost. As Angela and Maya stepped out of the police station, the gray afternoon light hit their eyes. It brought no relief. Instead, both felt a heavier weight settle on their shoulders, the sense of being watched by an invisible force, like hundreds of eyes hidden in every corner of the city. Angela gripped her bag tightly. She hurried toward the car, trying to stay calm. Maya was silent, but her eyes kept glancing back, reflecting unease. They got into the car. Angela started the engine. The dashboard clock ticked. The engine hummed steadily. But in that brief moment, Angela noticed something. In the far corner of the lot, a black sedan had its engine running already, as if waiting. She said nothing. She backed out gently to keep Maya calm. But as their car turned out of the lot, the sedan slowly joined the traffic behind, keeping just enough distance to avoid notice. Angela was no stranger to this feeling. For 27 years, she'd lived with the paranoia of being watched, but never had proof. Now, as the truth surfaced, that paranoia became reality. Her hands gripped the wheel, her eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. Each time she changed lanes, the sedan followed. Each time she slowed, it slowed. Subtle movements, not too obvious, but enough for her to know they were being watched. The road to her neighborhood was eerily quiet. Old rain left streaked puddles, streetlights cast a sickly yellow glow. Angela turned into a small side street, a shortcut she knew well. She wanted to test, to be sure it wasn't coincidence. And as she turned, the sedan followed silently. No doubt remained. Maya sensed the tension. She asked in a halting breath, but Angela only shook her head slightly, her eyes glued to the mirror. She didn't want to add fear, but her heart pounded. Jensen's words echoed. Do you know what you're poking at? Now she understood more than ever. She sped up. The tires rolled faster on the wet road. Wind whistled outside. Streetlights streaked by like cold sparks. But the sedan stayed close, neither faster nor slower, like a relentless shadow. Angela changed direction again, circling old houses with dark windows. Still the same, the car persisted, silent like a predator stalking prey. Maya's fear spread into a thick silence. Angela could feel her trembling breath, her small hands clutching her coat. But in that fear, Angela saw something else. Maya no longer wanted to run. She'd stayed, chosen to speak the truth, and now, despite the danger, they had to keep going. Angela decided not to drive straight home. She knew if she led the follower there, her last sanctuary would be compromised. Instead, she drove around the old commercial district, where shop security cameras were plentiful. She wanted to leave a trace, to ensure if something happened, there'd be evidence. The sedan followed, seemingly unbothered by the electronic eyes. She pulled into an empty lot near an abandoned supermarket. The air was cold, puddles reflected the gloomy sky. Angela stopped the car, turned off the engine. A heavy silence fell. Maya's eyes widened, unsure why they stopped here. Angela observed quietly, and as she expected, the sedan stopped too, a few dozen meters away, its headlights still on, glaring through the damp fog. That moment stretched like a lifetime. Angela's heart raced, sweat beaded in her palms. The other car's door didn't open. No one stepped out. Only the cold light pierced the tinted glass. Like a silent warning, we know what you're doing, and we're always here. Angela restarted the car. She decided not to wait. She drove straight onto the main road, merging into heavier traffic. This time, when she checked the rearview mirror, the sedan was gone, as if it never existed. But its absence didn't ease her. It felt like a hunting game. The beast had retreated into the dark, only to strike unexpectedly later. When they reached her neighborhood, Angela paused before entering the house. She sat still, hearing Maya's pounding heartbeat beside her, then sighed and drove into the garage. The door slammed shut. The sound echoed like a fragile promise of a moment's safety. But in Angela's heart, she knew, safety was an illusion. That night, as everything sank into silence, Angela stayed awake by the window, her eyes on the dark street. Every passing car, every fleeting shadow tensed her. She understood the game had begun, and once started, there was no way out. The next morning, faint sunlight pierced the thin curtains, but didn't dispel the heavy air in the house. Angela barely slept. She sat at the kitchen table, a cold coffee before her, her eyes fixed on nothing. The ticking wall clock pulsed in her veins, reminding her time was moving, and the force behind last night's sedan could appear any time. Maya emerged from the living room, her hair disheveled, her face still etched with panic. She wasn't used to this persistent tension, but Angela was. 27 years of living in ambiguity, among invisible shadows, had forged her into someone else. She looked at Maya, saw the exhaustion, but also the stubborn flame not yet extinguished in her eyes. The kitchen phone suddenly rang, shattering the silence. Angela picked it up. The other end had only steady breaths, then a low, dry male voice. "Enough, Mrs. Coleman. You don't know what you're poking at. Stop, if you want the girl to live." The words hit Angela's brain like a hammer. The girl? He meant Maya. Angela gripped the receiver, but before she could respond, the line cut off, leaving a hollow beep. She stood frozen. A chill ran down her spine. In that moment, she understood this had gone beyond memories or historical truth. Now, lives were at stake. Soon after, an envelope slid through the door slot. Angela picked it up. Her hands trembled. Inside was a single sheet with a short printed line. "This is the final warning. Don't try again." No signature, no trace, only the fresh ink smell, cold as a threat. Maya saw it. Her face paled. Her lips moved but formed no words. Angela sat, breathing heavily, but then something else rose within her. Anger. For years, she'd let pain turn to silence. Now, facing a clear threat, she felt she couldn't turn back. If she gave up, everything Naomi and those children endured would stay buried forever. And Maya, the last witness, would be the next target. She called Jensen. When he heard, his voice dropped, laced with worry. Angela recounted the threat, the envelope, the sense of being watched. Jensen was silent for a long time, then said he'd send someone to check, but his words hid caution. Angela knew something bigger was pressing down on him, too. At noon, as they went to buy food, Angela noticed a chilling detail. On her car's window were smudged handprints, faint but clear, as if someone had stood right there, staring inside while they slept. Maya trembled when she saw it. Her eyes shattered. But Angela wouldn't let herself collapse. She wiped the marks, got in the car, each move a silent declaration she wouldn't be cornered. They drove through the city, to a small church in the black neighborhood where Angela once attended. She believed there they could find some shelter and advice. Sitting in the room lit by small candles, Angela closed her eyes, her breathing slowed. But even in this sacred place, she felt unease lurking, as if darkness had crept to God's door. That evening, as they returned, an event solidified her belief they were on a dangerous edge. The front door wasn't locked as usual. Angela was certain she'd bolted it. Her heart tightened. Each step felt like walking on glass. Maya stood behind, clutching Angela's arm, her breath rapid. They entered. Everything in the house was intact. No items missing, no sign of theft. But one detail froze Angela's blood. Naomi's photo on the altar had been turned face down on the wood. The message was clear. They didn't come to take. They came to warn. To show Angela they could touch anything, anyone, anytime. That night, Angela didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, her eyes more resolute than ever. The shadow of fear enveloped the house, but in her mind, a flame burned bright. The choice was set: silence to preserve life, or press on to face the storm. And Angela knew her heart had no room for retreat. With Maya trembling in the next room, Angela silently vowed, "They can threaten us, but we won't be silent anymore. Naomi deserves the truth. Maya deserves to live. And justice, though late, must be paid." Are you still here, my dear audience? Pause and relax a bit. Maybe drink a glass of water and continue listening to the engaging content. Please comment the number 1 if you find this story interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The night rain poured over the city like a thick gray curtain. It shrouded every street. Angela sat in the car. Her hands gripped the steering wheel until they blanched. Maya sat beside her, silently watching the raindrops streak across the windshield. Both knew clearly there was no turning back. The threats, the shadowing figures, the unlocked door, Naomi's photo turned face down, all were signs. They'd been thrust into the vortex. Now their only choices were to go all the way or be crushed. Angela drove straight to the police station. No stops, no glances back. Jensen was waiting. He called them into a small room. The fluorescent lights flickered wearily. On the table was a thick file, old documents dusted off, mixed with freshly printed reports from the computer. Angela immediately recognized the familiar paper, the copy of the fateful 1996-pager message. Jensen looked at them, his eyes pensive, then spoke in a heavy voice. There was evidence the disappearance wasn't just tied to a teacher or school staff. Behind it was a human trafficking network, backed by powerful figures enough to silence both police and media. The case was shelved not for lack of leads, but because someone ordered it stopped. Angela listened, her heart stung sharply. She thought of Naomi, of the other children, and felt a steel hand crushing her chest. Maya sat motionless. Tears rolled uncontrollably. Each word from Jensen tore open a wound not yet healed. He placed another photo on the table. It was the former principal, Mrs. Ellis, whom Angela had suspected after seeing in the photo before the trip. She wasn't just there by chance. According to the files, she was the one who coordinated with the outside group, using the field trip to hand over the children. Jensen's stern look as he revealed the truth sent chills down Angela's spine. Everything connected. The photo, the pager message, Maya's memories, all pointed to the same place. Naomi and her friends didn't simply vanish. They were taken like goods in a dark deal. At that moment, the room's lights flickered and went out. Alarms blared in the hallway. Chaos erupted. Jensen drew his gun instinctively. He signaled Angela and Maya to step back. Heavy, purposeful footsteps echoed rapidly. Angela felt her blood freeze, as if the entire building had been swallowed by darkness. The door burst open. 2 strangers rushed in. In the chaotic moment, Jensen shouted. He fired. The muzzle flash cut through the dark. Angela pulled Maya to the floor. Her heart pounded wildly. Gunshots echoed through the room. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air. A cry of pain tore through, then silence. When the emergency lights flickered on, Angela saw Jensen slumped by the table. Blood spread in a dark red pool. One attacker was down, but the other had vanished in the chaos. Maya trembled, clutching Angela's shoulder, her eyes filled with fear. Angela rushed to Jensen. He was still breathing, but weakly. His eyes locked onto hers, mustering his last strength. Don't let them bury it again. Bring the truth out. For the kids. Then his hand fell limp. The alarms wailed on, blending with the rain lashing the windows. Angela sat there. Her whole body shook, but her eyes held something new. Fire. Jensen's death wasn't the end, but a torch passed on. She knew this was the price for one more step, a reminder that the path to justice would be bloodier still. She gripped Maya's hand, helped her stand. Outside, the darkness remained thick. Enemies still lurked, but Angela no longer felt alone. Naomi, the lost children, and now Jensen, all urged her to go to the end. As they stepped into the hallway, the red emergency lights swept the ceiling, casting their long shadows on the floor. Darkness swallowed every corner, but within it, Angela and Maya strode forward, as if the truth itself was guiding them. Outside, the rain poured relentlessly, but Angela felt it like a baptism, cleansing fear, leaving only iron resolve in her heart. She didn't know what tomorrow held, pursuit, betrayal, or even death, but she knew one thing for sure: the truth had begun to speak, and no force could silence it forever. The rain still fell on the city as Angela and Maya vanished into the night, carrying blood-stained pieces of the truth. Naomi and the other children would never return, but their call had rung out, piercing 27 years of silence. A detective fell, trading his life for the first light to shine through the thick darkness. And a mother, who lived her life in loss, now became an unyielding warrior. This story isn't just about a disappearance. It's a reminder that justice can be delayed, but not erased. The truth can be hidden, but it always finds a way to rise, through a witness's memory, through a heart's persistence. And sometimes, someone must dare to face the darkness for the light to finally shine. If you were Angela, would you have the courage to keep going, knowing the enemy is right outside? Would you stay silent to survive, or speak out to protect the children's memory? The answer may differ for each person, but one thing is certain. Stories like this force us to ask, will we choose justice or safety? And Angela's journey isn't over. The darkness out there hasn't retreated, and the truth has only just begun to emerge. If you want to join me for part 2 of this story, where a mother's battle against a shadowy force enters a life or death showdown, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and remember to follow. Because the truth is only just beginning.